Hey, sports fans! Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown live show coming at you after Game 4. Crazy game. Lots of weird stuff happening. Certainly we have to talk about, and anxious to hear your thoughts. And at the present, I am solo, but I think we're going to have everyone coming back in pretty quickly to discuss. So we'll see if we have any special guests and stuff like that. So, which reminds me, I need to do the link to somebody here. There we go. Okay. So I don't know, man. It was a weird game. I had to think that this might be like Kyrie's worst game I've seen him play. I can't remember him playing this poorly from the get-go. And you could just sort of tell he was off. And every pass, every dribble, every gather was just, he was fumbling and losing and just off balance. It was very, very strange to see. I'm not used to seeing that from Kyrie Irving at all. And as a result, and Luka was a little bit off too. Now, part of this is that it simply is really, really hard to sweep, right? You know what I mean? It's really hard to beat anybody 4 times in a row. So that's kind of what happens. You're going to get like these anyway, and I don't know how indicative it's going to be. Now, congrats to Kat for finding his jump shot. It was a little bit concerning how troubling he was shooting and just sort of discombobulated. He was all over the place today. We saw some really low basketball IQ by Minnesota. It's a concern I've had for a long, long time now, since Finch got there. Some of those fouls that they were taking were just like trying to keep the Mavericks close to them. There's no other way to explain it. In the last one that we had with Anthony Edwards on the Luka 3, and then Luka doesn't hit the free throw, it was strange. It's a weird all around. And I'm anxious to hear more about it from you guys. Don't forget, if you want your question answered, the best way to do that is on the super chat side of things on the YouTube side. So come over there. What else? So let's see what we have in the comments to get started here, to get warmed up. Oh yeah, I know. I want to get the, let me get the box score up here real quick. So, but really just what an interesting game. I mean, interesting, strange, lots of stuff happening. What's up? We got Mike, Samola, Sumeets. Thanks. What's going on, Christian? People want. I'm seeing Wolves in 7. I mean, listen, no one has come back from down 3-0, and I don't think it's happening this time. Because I didn't really even. It was funny. I had tweeted, and I've been saying this in the live shows before, that they need to win going away because they're not going to win these close games. And you know what? They did pull this one out, but. It required just some terrible playing by Kyrie. I mean, just terrible. And it had Kyrie made the layup he missed and didn't turn the ball over on another one, I think. This is a 1-possession game. So they could have gone right back to that same script we've been seeing this whole time. So interesting, really concerning all around. I hope that they just chalk it up for Kyrie to say, oh, well, he'll be back and he'll be fine. But I don't know. It was very, very strange. And I wonder what you guys think. It had to be strange. We haven't literally Kyrie's numbers. Let's look at his numbers first. 6 for 18, 1 for 6 from 3, 4 turnovers in about 42 minutes of the game time, 4 assists. Luka, was not great either. He was 7 for 21, 4 for 11 from 3, which is okay. And then was able to generate 12 free throws and hit 10 of them. But that last one that he missed, man, that was tough. And then triple-double, 15 rebounds, 10 assists. So it was interesting. They allowed in the very beginning a lot of that physicality we had seen a couple of times before from Minnesota. And, it makes sense. This is a closeout game. They're going to be desperate. They're going to be fighting, and the referees want the players to decide the game. So, that was what was going on, I suppose. It took a little while, but when they finally realized, Dallas finally realized, if they get the ball below the free throw line, good things happen. And that's when some of those fouls started happening because and I'm not even talking about in the lane below the free throw line. I'm talking about just below the free throw line extended. They were pushed so high on a lot of their possessions, and the ball never got near the free throw line. And that as a result, the clock would wind down, and they were getting pushed around. But as soon as they could kind of navigate a little bit better and turn some corners and get in, now the defense was scrambling, and they're playing as hard as they can. They're going as fast as they can, and they're running into people. They're not processing as quickly as they need to because they're just trying to go so fast and so desperately on defense. And then, the fouls started happening, and that's what really helped Dallas get back in the game. So let me get my notes out here because I have some interesting notes as we're waiting for some people to jump in here. Let's see here. So what was I writing down? They're still making a mistake, and that mistake is feeding Rudy on his rolls. I don't know how many times we have to see. I can do a montage for you of fumble passes, air balls from close, just awkward moves. It's just, the one thing he actually can do pretty well is he can catch it and then pass the ball out and find that, make a decent read for a shot. But once he starts dribbling the ball and starts trying to do post moves, it's very, very frustrating to watch because, again, I keep saying this, by the time you get to the conference finals, your role players should know their role and they should know exactly what they should and shouldn't be doing. And Rudy continues to violate that, and they continue to give it to him to violate it. And I don't understand why. It's hurting them. It really is. Let him be the guy who's finishing on the lobs. Let him be the guy who gets an offensive rebound, puts it back in. Great, all that stuff. Let him be that guy. But don't give him the short rolls around the free throw line where he's going to think he needs to do some, crazy move. So anyhow, it was that was my first note I had written down, and then Kyrie right from the beginning was just kind of careless. Tried to shoot a ball in the corner under heavy duress when that wasn't even a shot there, and he got stripped. And then the next time down, he's like zigzagging through the lane, and then gets stripped again. Like he doesn't get stripped. He doesn't. His ball handling's too good. But let me we have our first guest to bring on the show today. I'm honored to have our repeat guest on the show, and that would be Mark Jones. Yeah. Mark,
What's
how
up,
are you?
You know what? Unbelievable.
Yeah, crazy, right? I don't. Well, give me some other adjectives. I'm not sure what I don't even know.
You know what? I was thinking, Nick. I finished a 48-hour water fast a little earlier this evening. All water for the last 48 hours. And I had a fantastic meal with my daughter and my mother-in-law. And I imagine that's how Karl Anthony Towns felt tonight. he finally ate, right? Like he finally looked like the guy that we saw during the regular season. And, that was really it. And the magic number for me, and Finch even said that if Anthony Edwards shoots the ball at least 20 times, 25 times, they have a chance to win. He took 25 field goal attempts tonight. They won the game. And, that's kind of the thing that really pops off the page at me off the top.
Yeah, I'm glad that you're bringing Minnesota in because I was kind of looking at Dallas too much. It's time to start talking about what Minnesota did well because they competed. It was great to see. Karl Anthony Towns 9 for 13, 4 for 5 from 3. You have to say the only thing that was troubling were the fouls. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, it's funny. I was speaking to a buddy of mine who's a former coach on the Minnesota Timberwolves staff under the Thibodeau reign, and I didn't realize that going back to 2019, if you look at the numbers, Karl Anthony Towns has been in the top 6 of fouls committed from 2019 all the way up to 2024. He was 6 this year. I believe he was first in 22, first in 21, second in 2019. And the guy just can't stay on the floor at some points. And if he does, then they have a great chance to win. But if you hearken back to that time when he was being coached by Tibbs, he couldn't stay on he didn't close games. So this is not a new problem, really, him being able to stay on the floor and stay out of foul trouble. So at times it can be problematic, but he offset that tonight by making shots. And I thought Anthony Edwards was brilliant tonight. He really was. And, defensively, it looked like, I'd have to go back and look at it, but it just felt and looked like they did a better job of putting 2 on the ball and blitzing Luka and not leaving guys out there on an island with him. And both Luka missed, he was 6 of 16 at one point. Kyrie was 2 of 8 at one point. And Minnesota was only up by 2 points. And I'm thinking to myself, how the heck are they not up by more with those 2 guys really not in their groove and not smoking? And it never happened for Kyrie and Luka tonight.
I know, and it looked like it was about to, right? And even though, and I keep saying this, when you go down the wire against Dallas, you better have a nice 10-point lead because they're going to execute and hit tough shots. I just didn't think I wouldn't, listen, if Luka makes that last free throw and cuts it to 3, right? Is that what it was?
Yeah. Yeah.
Things are a little bit different and being more interesting. But like, yeah, it was weird. And I suppose trying to beat somebody 4 times in a row is hard.
Yeah.
And Kyrie, like somebody's going to have an egg at some point in one of these games. And so I guess it was Kyrie's turn. Although you're right, Luka wasn't amazing, and
No.
yet they were right there. The Karl Anthony Towns fouls, like a couple of those are just like he's taking them on purpose. Sometimes it's very, very strange.
Yeah.
And he gets in trouble because the first one is not a good one, and then all of a
Right.
sudden he gets the one that what can you do? Well, now that is the second one. That's the one the first one he's got to avoid. So I don't know. What do you think? Is this any kind of a springboard, or is this sort of the last gasp of a team desperate for a win?
It's interesting. I thought it was over because tonight is the first time that Kyrie Irving has lost in an elimination game, right? I think he was 15-0 going
Oh,
into
wow.
elimination games tonight. Yeah. I mean, this was a first. And if we're going to see a first like this, then, hey, listen, I was in Miami last year when Boston won game 6, making it 3 in a row to send it back to a game 7 after being down 0-3 in that series. If you remember that Eastern Conference final last year. It happened once, and we've seen a bunch of teams win game 7s on the road this year, visiting teams. So, there's a reason why the Timberwolves were the number 3 seed this year in the long run, and maybe they found something. I just think it's going to take consistent, sustained defense, getting 2 on the ball, and
Yeah.
Anthony Edwards to shoot the basketball at least 25 times. Nick, I thought tonight that even though he took that many field goal attempts, there were still times where he was a little deferential. And, but still, I mean, if you look at his stat line tonight, what did he finish with? 29, I think it was, on pretty efficient shooting. He had 29 on 11 of 25, 2 of 5, 5 of 8 from the line. I mean, it was good enough, but Cat was really the big difference tonight.
Yeah, and when Anthony Edwards is really aggressive and taking a lot of shots, it's like I like when he is facilitating as well. And even though he's still not accurate on a lot of those passes, sometimes they fly out of bounds.
Right.
There are moments where like we're now seeing the beginning of that part of his game where Luka is way beyond that as someone who's been doing this a lot longer. Where the no look, the ability for Luka to literally move defenders with his eyes is
Right.
unparalleled. But I do think that Anthony Edwards is going to get to that point. Now he had 9 assists tonight too, where he'll be able to continue to bring all that focus and then create shots for his teammates and then still get his 29, which is great.
Yeah, he's an improved playmaker. He's definitely improved playmaker from a season ago. I think he had a career high in assists this year. Better rim decisions, better decisions in the paint, more patience in the paint. And I had a great conversation with Chris Hines, the assistant coach, who's basically Ant's player development coach throughout the course of the season. He talked about Ant being much more patient in the paint, and he hit some nice mid-range shots tonight. I mean, it's going to take that and a lot more. And I think late in the game, one of the key moments for Minnesota was, if you remember, they actually caught Luka switching on to Rudy Gobert, and Gobert got to the free throw line. And it was a point of the game where it still could have tilted either way.
Yeah, that was one I was a little nervous. I was worried for Rudy, but Rudy turned it into something, and he hit 1 and 2. But before you came on, I talk a lot about why they continue to feed Rudy on short rolls and kind of let him do his thing, multiple dribble, ISO, post up stuff. It's just not really his thing. He shouldn't really be doing
work.
Those.
No.
And even if you want to say like, oh, let's let him have something to keep him energized and energetic, it's like, well, then give him some more lobs or something. I don't know, because you can't in the Western Conference Finals, you can't be wasting, possessions like that. It's weird.
Yeah.
Now the defense on Luka I thought was interesting because what they might have to do going forward is let somebody else bring the ball up because they were really physical. You can see he was looking at the ref, I think, every time coming down, right, wanting a foul. They weren't going to give it to him. And he's in a bad headspace on the way up the court. It's taking a little bit too long to get up the court, right? All those things. I feel like Dallas is going to have to adjust and do something to get him off or let somebody else bring it up.
Yeah, Jason's done that this year a lot with him, more than the year before and the year before that. This year, they've had Kai bring it up. They've had other guys initiate and get Luka going off the catch, mid post ups. So that might be a strategy. And Kyle Henderson seemed to be guarding him a little bit more at times tonight. It felt like too when he was on the floor. But it comes down to shot making. Luka and Kyrie were not their regular selves tonight, and I do think that Minnesota's defense had something to do with it. I think that Elston Turner probably pulled the string somewhere along the line. I got to go back and look at it in real time. It's really hard to break it down, but like I said, it just felt like they did a better job of containing Luka, putting two on him, and even when he snakes those pick and rolls, and when he gets his man in jail, gets his man on his hip, those paint touches didn't feel like they were as impactful tonight. So, as much as we want to talk about those two guys, Kai and Luka, not making shots, I think got to give Minnesota's defense their flowers tonight.
For sure. I mean, I definitely want to give them the flowers for the defense on Luka. They were going underneath on a few of those. They were varying it better. I think they're making it harder for Luka to read. The Kyrie thing to me was a little bit like he was just off. Like even like a normal pass that he needed to make that was right there, like was off by a couple feet, and like they had to reach for it. And then like weird stuff with the dribble. So again, that'll happen. But I definitely think that it got them the defensive energy they brought. Got them off their game a little bit early. It's funny because Cat shot so well. There were moments when I was worried about Cat too. It felt like the fouls were bad decisions, but it was really great to see him hit that. Did he hit two in the last? He hit 1 3. I think he had 2 threes in the fourth, right?
I think it was 4. I think 4 on the evening. It was at least 2 or 3 in the fourth quarter. Yeah,
totally. So it's great to see because he probably feeds more off of like the emotional energy and his equilibrium of his own himself more than anybody else on that team. So it's great to see that he was able to find some success after that because it felt like it could have gone a little either way in the middle of that, and it felt like here they go again, right? Kyrie's going to hit a 3, Luka's going to hit a 3. They're going to turn the ball over, and then poof, the series would be over. So
congratulations to. Finchie drew up a great play at the end there when Ant came up the lane, and it was a sideline out of bounds, and Naz Reid looked like he set a screen and then slipped out and got the layup, which should have been a 3-point play. He got fouled, but they didn't call it. And I just felt like Minnesota was executing much better offensively tonight too. Yeah,
it was good to see. I think Kyrie went to the cutter. I think it was PJ Washington and Kyrie both went with it. Probably Ant coming off of Naz, and then a good find. Who threw the pass? Do you remember?
Might have been Kyle Anderson. He's a great inbound passer.
Yeah, probably. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure it was Kyle Anderson. Yeah.
Yeah, and by the way, if you're out there and you're inbounding and you're a player, you always want to keep your eye on the screener for a little bit longer because the cutter, if he's open, he'll be open for a couple steps later. But it's the screener that you want to check a little bit longer. So that's big for sure. And again, taking advantage of a desperate defense, and they're just so desperate. They're trying to do whatever they can, and they get a little less of ability to read and perform. So, what do you think is going to happen in Game 5?
You know what? I really think that Minnesota comes back and feels good about themselves first. I think they found something in being able to make Dallas feel them at the defensive end. Dallas I know they missed shots, but they never had their rhythm tonight. And, when I go back and look at it, I'm going to try and figure it out a little bit defensively. But, Rudy seemed to be much better defending at the rim tonight. I thought he did a better job of protecting the paint tonight. And they looked more like the team that defensively got to their identity, and that can travel back into Game 5. So I think they got a great shot, and Ant getting up shots is the key for them. If he shoots 25 shots, they're going to be in it in the last 2 minutes of the game. They get better have a lead, like we talked about, because Dallas has Kai and Luka as the best closers in the playoffs right now. But that plus, I like the strategy that you alluded to. With them getting full court pressure on Luka, whether it's Jaden McDaniels, whether it's Kyle Anderson, whether it's Anthony Edwards, just making him work. I think we saw the impact that it had at times in the previous series against Denver when I thought they wore out Jamal Murray a little bit. And even at times when Cat was pressing up on Joker, making him bring the ball up. It at times had an impact on Joker. So if they get back to their defensive identity in Game 5, there's no reason why we don't have a Game 6 in Dallas in 4 days.
Wow. All right. Interesting.
Hey,
Yeah.
Nick, here's the truth, Nick. I don't golf, okay? I don't golf. I want more basketball. When there's no playoff games and there's sweeps, I hate it.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, don't forget, we got WNBA as well.
True,
and,
true.
And we got to wait for EuroLeague to start. Or EuroLeague's going on right now, too, until then we have them back in July. So, but yes, I hear you. Everybody wants, more basketball. No one wants this to end. I don't know, though. I mean, I know it's on the road for Dallas if they're going to try and close it out, but they've already been able to win on that floor.
Yeah.
And, again, if Kyrie is just 10% better tonight, then they probably win. I mean, this was a one possession game. So we'll see how that all works. Because, the Ant thing is interesting because obviously when they show a second defender, he tends to want to make the right play, pass the ball, it doesn't get a shot off. So the question now is, are the Mavs going to focus on that and realize we have to try and limit those, and let anybody else beat them? I don't know. You think that the Mavericks are going to be willing to get that out of shape defensively to prevent him from getting to the 20 shots?
I think they stay what they're doing because overall I think it's working. Mm-hmm. But he hasn't shot a spectacular percentage from the field. But with him, it's about the paint touches, right? Like a couple times late in the game, especially he took on the double team, touched the paint and sprayed it to Cat for a couple big threes. I think at least one of those was an assist from Ant, and other times, as long as you activate the blender, right, Nick? As long as even if you take on the double team and you don't shoot it, if you stress the defense and activate the blender and get them in rotation like rotisserie chicken, man, then the game starts. Then Minnesota's got a good shot.
Love it. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, Mark, thanks for coming on the show. I really appreciate it. Always great to hear your take, and hopefully we'll have you back on for another one of these games.
Yes. Go Wolves, just because I want more basketball.
All right, go Wolves.
Thanks for having me, Nick.
Take care.
You got it, buddy.
All righty. Now we have our usual suspects coming in, ready to come in now to talk more about the game. We got Chip Clark, as always. Chip, what's going on, my man?
Hey, good evening, fellas. How you doing?
All right, good. And then let's bring in Chris right away. We'll go side by side here. Let's see. Which button do I hit for that one?
Hey,
that's not it.
Hey, Chris.
There we are.
How's it going?
So yeah, let's had a little solo take on some things, and then we had Mark come in and talk more. But that
was great.
Let's get your immediate reactions to what happened. Chip, why don't you go first?
Yeah, I mean, you guys had already talked about it with Mark a little bit, and you did solo, but you kind of got the sense that this was going to be one of those situations where near the end, the Wolves were going to have trouble closing out a game like they've had trouble all along, right? And that the Mavs were going to kind of come back in it and finish it going away. But then again, you go back to Kyrie having a rough night. Even though Luka had 28 points, he was still negative 13, I believe. So it's, when you look at the plus minus for Dallas, even with some of their Kyrie only had 16 points, but he was only -2, -3, somewhere around there. But then you look at all the stars for Minnesota, and they're all plus big, So it's one of those situations where that's something that they needed down the stretch. I like some of the tweaks that Minnesota made. And I think that this was a strong showing on a closeout situation, like closing out a game from Minnesota, and it's something they absolutely needed in this situation. So kudos to them.
Chris?
Yeah, same. I think the defense from Minnesota was a lot better tonight. The whole close game situation, like every one of these games are close, and like Chip said, you expect Minnesota to lose. But I actually these they have how many guys on the staff, like coaches and everything. They see a lot of the stuff, right? They know the adjustments. So expecting them to lose 4 in a row, 4 close games in a row, it's they have to win one of them. Something has to go their way, right? And it looked like it wasn't going to, with Cat fouling out with another dumb foul.
Yeah.
Right. So it's that almost screwed them over
But wait, that
But-
wasn't even the dumbest foul of the end.
No.
Of the end either.
That wasn't.
There was two other ones of his that were dumber than that for sure.
Yeah, but no, by the time about the Anthony Edwards foul
Yeah.
on the Luka 3, that almost again that was like, oh, here they go again.
Yep.
So they can't win for trying. Like sometimes it really there's a basketball IQ thing going on here. I hate to say it, and I have to imagine the coaching staff of Minnesota is probably also ripping their hair out because they know that you're not supposed to do those things and the players aren't supposed to, and yet the players continue to do it. So someone is not getting through well enough, and they're young. I mean, they're sort of young, I suppose, not when you mix Conley and Rudy, but Anthony Edwards. But Anthony Edwards has been in the league for a while now, so he's been in the league. Even McDaniels has been in the league. How many years has he been in the league? 4 or 5 now, right? Something like that.
He just got his extension, so so it's like his 4th or 5th year. Yeah.
Hey, what do you make of this, by the way? Jaden McDaniels has suddenly become sort of a dribble drive midi pull-up guy, whatever. He was really good in game 3, right? And then this game, let me look at his numbers. I don't think he was that great, but he's doing it in a way that I'm curious. I don't feel like I've seen this from him before. He went 4 for 8 from the field, but what do you guys think of that?
McDaniels he like perplexes me as a basketball player. You think he's like a one-dimensional 3-and-D guy, but he has these moments of like you just said, off the dribble, nice touch, finesse around the basket, and then other times he's like a train wreck. So I just don't don't understand. I don't know which end is closer to the type of player he is. I think it's the more 3-and-D, run him off the line. He can't really do much else, but there are certain games you run him off the 3-point line, he's making a great play or making a nice pull-up or doing something else. Like, he really confuses me as a basketball player. I don't know which one it is.
If you watch, if the Dallas Mavericks are going to try and limit shots from Ant, you're going to see McDaniels be the guy who's going to get some space on a catch to do something other than maybe just catch and shoot, which he probably just should do that anyway. But I feel like that's when it's going to be that's what's going to be the difference there is like, can he make those plays or not? I got to tell you, though, I mean, the absence of Lively, we didn't bring that up at all yet, is gigantic, right? Like the impact he had even on the game last game when he went out was so immense on both ends of the floor. And so here's the problem. If you were to go through my texts over the last 4 years and I'd look up the word Powell, I can guarantee you'd find dozens of texts of me sending to somebody saying, this guy is a ceiling for them. Like he can't be a guy playing 25 minutes a game for the Mavericks and they have to win. He is just not good enough athletically and movement wise, and he's just awkward and everything. So they gave him minutes in the last game and they barely kept those together. And then tonight, I feel like his minutes. Let me see what his plus minus. Watch, he was like a +5, right? Let me see here.
Sure.
Powell's plus minus was -4 in 3 minutes. Okay, that's hard to do. So why they didn't just go to Kleba and give Kleba all those minutes, I have no idea. You like
Kleba over Powell?
Kleba over Powell?
Yeah, you like Kleba over Powell
without question. Even the Kleba coming back without that guy was as rusty as the Tin Man. Like there's no question. But I take him because Powell. He's just sort of like awkward and it's too fast, and he's just everything is too fast for him, and he's running around, and he's off balance and all that stuff. So it drives me nuts. We have a super chat. Let's get to our first super chat to also remind everybody that if you want your question answered, then the best way to do that is on super chat on YouTube. Spencer B, thank you so much, Spencer. His comment is Celtics in 6. Well, we know the Celtics are already in the finals, so that's good. I'm assuming he probably means, well, maybe he just says either team, but probably the Mavericks. Let's attack this one. Would anybody have Celtics in 6 over the Mavs?
I don't. I'm not saying it's not possible. Obviously it's possible, but I don't. I think it's going to be one of those things where if the Celtics win it, it'll have to be in 7.
Yeah, I like where you're going. I like where your head's at on that one. I don't think the Mavericks are. I think the Mavericks could beat the Celtics.
Yeah.
I feel like they have the two guys that they need. And although, funnily enough, before tonight, because Kyrie he looks like Kyrie. Suddenly, I'm thinking, will that happen again? Can Kyrie get in that funk again? Like, again, remember, if he was just 10% better, right, then the series is over tonight. I would think.
Yep.
That's all Kyrie needed to be. There's one turnover he threw and one layup he missed, right? Whatever. Get rid of those two things, and then they would have survived. I think so.
Do you think who has been the best defensive backcourt or just defensive personnel so far that's guarded Kyrie in the playoffs?
Oh, overall in all the rounds?
Yeah.
That's a really good question. Do you have an answer?
I don't have an answer. I was just going to ask you, whatever your answer is, do you think they're better than Derek White and Drew Holiday?
Okay. Well, that's a good question. Right. He probably hasn't faced anybody as good as those two guys. Right. I think we can say that. Now I'm trying to think right now on OKC. Who was guarding him in OKC?
It was the rookie off the bench for the most part.
Isaiah Joe?
No.
Well, he's not a rookie, but
what's his name?
God damn it. And that was 2 weeks ago. How are we supposed to remember anything?
I know, right?
What's that guy's name? Wallace. Cason Wallace.
Oh, Cason Wallace is guarding him. But in the starting lineup.
It wasn't
KD.
It wasn't Jalen Williams, right? Was it Jalen? No.
Maybe. It was because Shea wasn't guarding him. I can't picture that. Anyway, we'll have to go check.
Shea wasn't guarding him.
But either way, that round.
That's a good point. That's a good point about, against the Celtics, having guys like that guarding him. That's probably the, Holiday, probably be the best defender he sees.
So who guards Luka then? Tatum?
Jalen. Jalen will probably start on.
Really?
Yeah, that I think during their matchup in Dallas this year, I remember Jaylen Brown feasting on Luka Doncic. He didn't really have a great game that game.
Really?
He guarded him and scored on him throughout the whole game.
Okay. So and Luka wasn't going back at him?
He tried. It just wasn't his night.
Interesting. I'll have to look at. Do you remember when that was? Because the other problem is there's a number of these games I wanted to look at to see matchups, and they trade hadn't happened. So
they didn't. I think it may have been before the trade.
Yeah, you know what I mean. Like when you add two starters, and then Lively switches his role off the bench, like it's just a different team. And then by the way, some people wanted to argue, well, this game happened, a week after the trade. I'm like, you need 2 weeks, 3 weeks, you need a month before you can kind of gel, and that's what we're seeing now. So I mean, obviously the Mavericks are playing as well as they've played all year long. This is as good as they played. So, Chip, what about any interesting calls that caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, so we had already referenced a couple of Cats fouls that were not smart fouls. You know what I mean? And I got to say this one more thing about Cat before we get into it. Well, you guys you talked about it with Mark, but it was great to see him get going. You know what I mean? He's been struggling mightily to see him go 4 for 5 from 3 when he was 0 for 8 last game and having those struggles behind the arc. But then also, kind of getting into the lane too and getting to the basket really helped out tremendously. But him only playing 29 minutes, I'm thinking like the kind of night that he had, if he was able to stay on the floor a little bit more, then they could have won going away a little bit better. You know what I mean? So like a couple of those fouls you talk about, I know there was a sequence where some people thought there was a rebounding sequence in the first half I wanted to address that I wrote down. Luka went up for a rebound over Ant. I don't know if you guys remember this. It was a no call.
Yeah.
Luka actually gets to the ball almost simultaneously with contacting Ant from behind. Ant falls forward kind of provocatively. And so it was one of those things where everybody thought that should have been a foul. Then immediately on the other end during rebounding action, Cat obviously reaches over and through the opponent to dislodge them while he's trying to reach for the rebound and was called for the foul. I didn't see those as equals right there. I didn't necessarily love the no call on the first play. But the Cat one was obvious that needed to be called. So that was one of the stupid ones. Then you look at the one near the end, right, where he's jumping forward to close out on Luka. Sure. So this is the pump and shoot we've talked about before, right?
Yeah.
It's those situations where Luka does a great job of when he's pump faking, leaning back, right? So he's already, center of gravity's here. He's standing above his legs. When he pumps fake, he leans back. That gets the defender Cat to jump forward to contest, right? When the defender jumps forward, they're not in legal guarding position. All right. So if they're leaning forward, if they're still coming forward when contact occurs, then that's going to be a defensive foul. I understand the potential overt movement by Luka, but he's just leaning back over his legs again, and he's slightly in front of his legs. It's not an overt into Cat to create contact that otherwise would not have occurred. Contact was going to occur regardless because Cat was entering his space. That's why Cat was called for that foul. I think you tweeted about that one as well.
Yeah, I did. I mean, it was really tough because there is an overt movement to try and draw the foul clearly, but Cat is clearly moving into him anyway. Probably was going to foul him even if he faded a little bit backwards. There was like that a lot of that movement. So I get it. It was tough on both ends, and you just hope that you're just better defensively overall in the next game. Anyway, doesn't have to see those plays. But that was rough.
Yeah. Well, hey, one more thing on that play. The reason this one seems like more of an overt movement from Luka is the reason why I started it by saying when Luka does the pump and shoot, he leans back to do that.
Great call.
Right. So it's more of he's moving forward more, but he's not moving forward outside of where he originally was. Does that make sense? He's moving back over top of his legs where he's actually leaning back, and now he's coming forward and closing some space. But it's actually the space he's entitled to. He's not closing space on a defender that contact wouldn't have occurred otherwise.
That's a really great point. Well, now that I think about it, we haven't done a live show for a couple nights. Let's just connect that to what happened last night, because we had a little bit of a chat and people were really in tune with this one, where we had a foul by Jaylen Brown with a distinct contact from the hand to the face of the player. And he didn't necessarily mean it. He just was going, whatever it was, he got wrapped up. He knocked the guy in the TJ McConnell and just knocked him down. It was really hard. To be honest, I had been speeding through the game because I had started it late, so I didn't even see the kick to the face of Peyton Pritchard earlier. Yep. So let's talk about this, because it seems like, and I think Chip, you also make this point, that the kick to the face from as he's drifting by and not literally looking at him was not a flagrant, and because of that, they didn't call the flagrant on Jaylen Brown. Do you feel like those two things are correlated?
And like I told you, I don't think that was a main factor in making the decision not to upgrade the foul from Brown to McConnell. But I think that if you're on the fence about whether or not to upgrade or not, the fact that you did not upgrade that first one may come into play and cause you not to upgrade the second one, because you did not call Jackson for a flagrant on that kick to Pritchard's face. And granted, I don't know if you could call that unnecessary. You know what I mean? And so I want to get back to the rule language here. First of all, let me say this. I agreed with Steve Javie's explanation last night on the broadcast for any of you guys that heard it. I feel like a couple of the flagrant foul criteria were present, and I feel like that was enough to warrant a flagrant foul penalty 1 on Jaylen Brown. Okay. So I'm just going to get that out there first. But then immediately what I said to you after that is I at least understand how they arrived at a common foul and how they stuck with that for a couple of things. The definition of flagrant foul penalty 1 is unnecessary contact. If they really feel that Jaylen Brown there's no wind-up impact follow through, he's trying to make a play on the ball, he doesn't go through him, it's one of those things where McConnell's coming toward him as he's reaching up for that, then I can see how they arrived at that not being unnecessary contact. Just like they would have arrived at that with Jackson earlier on Pritchard. That's not unnecessary. He's just flailing in the air and happens to catch him with the foot in the face. So those are a few things to look at. But let me just say, I actually think both of them could have been upgraded to a flagrant 1.
I always kind of felt like overt contact like that to the face is like there really isn't much to think about at that point. But the reason why the first one is different in my mind, because it was a foot. And it wasn't like it's like, is he drifting into the foot as well? And like, does he try and kick I don't think you try and kick your foot out to hit the guy. I mean, that would be so obvious. But what do you think?
Is that a non-basketball play though?
Right. What do you think, Chris?
I would agree with you, but someone linked a video of him doing it earlier this year,
You're kidding
kicking
me.
someone in the face with the same move. So I was like, oh no, he did that on purpose.
So he's
wow.
flying through the air and he's trying to stick that leg out to make sure
I
they
didn't
don't
see
get
that.
by.
The same move, same exact move. I was like, oh wow.
Wild. So, and that's another thing is, so you look at the flagrant foul criteria, things that they consider: severity of contact. Okay, both contacts were severe, right?
Yeah.
Because he gets hit in the face and he falls hard to the floor. All right. Add to that for the McConnell play, high potential for injury on both of those, but McConnell was in a vulnerable position. At least Pritchard was grounded when he got contacted in the face.
Right.
He wasn't an airborne player, So that's the one little area you could say maybe a little bit more, and maybe they aren't comparable. I'm not saying they're comparable. I think the one that, if you're looking at those two plays and you're saying you got to take flagrant one on one of these plays, I think everybody takes flagrant one on the Brown McConnell play. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that one's the more obvious one. But I'm just saying that could have factored into their decision if they were on the fence. The fact that they had not given a flagrant one to Jackson earlier in the game.
Well, Spencer B has a second super chat. Thank you so much, Spencer. And he says, keep that same energy. I don't want to see a change up. Of course, he's talking about something from 10 minutes ago. I probably. Okay,
he's talking about the Celtics, us saying that.
Yeah, right.
Or probably me saying that if the Celtics win it, I think it would have to be in 7. Yeah. So, but I mean, hey, listen, I think the final series is going to be a great series, no matter which two teams are matching up in that.
And I keep forgetting that KP hasn't played, and so why I keep forgetting, I don't know. And obviously he changes so many things so quickly, but he'll also be really rusty. So I don't know. We'll have to find. We'll see. But and I think it's clear, right, that he will play starting game 1 of the finals. Is that right?
It's looking like it. I think they said it'd be 5 weeks since his injury on, I guess, next Thursday. So.
Okay. Yeah.
So
and then I mean, I guess it's good that there was this series extended, because otherwise we would have a week off. Is that basically what we're
yeah. We would have a little over a week. Really.
Right. When's the first finals game? January or June
6th. June 6th.
I think it's 6th.
Yeah. So so good. We'll keep this good. They got to fill it in some way, but let's get to Bron. Bron, thank you so much, Bron. Best friend of the breakdown. Unrelated to Mavs Wolves, do you think the Jaylen Brown step through will become as common as the Euro step in the next 2 years? Wow. I got to tell you, man, to deal with people on Twitter, to try and help them understand the rules, and either it's they refuse to believe it, or they're like that the rule is wrong, or I don't like it, so it's wrong. And I'm like, or I don't like it because it's this newfangled thing, even though the rule has been there since the dribble was invented, basically. It's very, very strange how this all comes about. And really, I think I have to believe it's rooted in, when you're a kid and you have someone that you respect or look up to, they probably told you have to jump off of 2 feet on a step through. And so you believe that it's cemented in your brain, and like nothing will change that. And your whole worldview is centered around a 2-footed step through. Like I know, because this is how I was. And instead of saying, oh, wow, what a whole new world of, ways to attack, I had somebody on Twitter try and say that it was too risky to go off of 1 foot on a step through. I'm like, what?
Too risky.
So anyway.
I think it's too risky to go off 2 on a step through.
Right. Well, I mean, you don't get as much distance, and it's hard. It makes it harder. But I don't know. I would like to think, because who do we have? We have some usual suspects right now. You have DeMar DeRozan. You have Ant. You have Jaylen Brown. By the way, I would not be surprised if they've been looking at all the stuff we've been sharing. Would not be surprised if that's what they're getting their the information from. And like, but by the way, Chip and I, we were interacting with somebody on Twitter who, again, a grain of salt. We don't know how verified this could very well be, but someone was saying that their good friend is an assistant coach in the NBA, and the assistant NBA coach was saying that there is some disagreement about whether you can jump off of 1 foot on a step through. That's disheartening, man. Like, if you're in the NBA, you got to know those rules, and you got to know what's legal and what's not. And that way you can tell them to do it. Like, can you imagine a coach saying, hey, I don't think you should step through on 1 foot? Look how devastating it is for Jaylen Brown. He gets great shots off of that.
And that was a great point you made. That was a great point you made to him. It's like, that this has to be accepted. And the point that I was making to that same person was, honestly, as a coach, with all of the resources, NBA resources that you have at your disposal as an NBA coach of any kind, head coach or assistant coach, the fact that you still don't know that a step through is legal. That Brown play, for example, last night, that's Brown step through. The fact that you don't know that is obviously legal means that you're either too lazy or you don't care enough to get to the truth or get to the bottom of it. Because
you could be old, but then again, if you're old enough, then you remember when it really was legal before 1980 and no one was calling it anyway, right?
Exactly. And that could be the case, and I don't want to be unfair on that for sure. But you brought up a good point just a second ago, and it's something, our friend Milton Chavis, MDW basketball. We're all good friends and stuff like that. And one of the things he says all the time that we always say is he calls it hand-me-down rules.
Yeah.
Hand-me-down rules. It's rules that have been passed on for generations that are not actually rules, but it's things that people thought were rules and they never researched it themselves, and they just kept sharing that misinformation throughout generation to generation. And now here's where we get to this place that we're in now.
Chris, you're younger. Were you taught you had to go off both feet on a step through?
I think so. Probably.
Okay. Wow. Yeah. I mean, we've always started this whole thing about, I know Devin Williams and I did it in 20, you know what? I hate to say it's probably 9 years now. And I don't hate to say it, but I can't believe it's been 9. It's been almost like a decade that we've been on this. Right.
Yep.
Actually I had done it even before that. With Ronnie, I did a video right around 2014 when he was in town. So it's probably been 10 years. And so that was what opened my eyes. I didn't know. And I was a high school head coach for years, and I had no idea. I would always teach it off of both feet. And I remember I had a really big center who I wanted to teach a sky hook to. And I was like, well, damn, I got to have him dribble it, because how else is he going to step on that foot and rise up? And I probably wasn't looking at YouTube at the time, because if I would have watched Kareem, right, you would have seen Kareem pivot, and then just step off that pivot and then take one step and shoot it. And so it didn't occur to me, or if I saw it, I might have thought, oh, that must have only be an NBA thing. So anyway, the point being that, it's really rough when you're you're in a certain period of your life where you're impressionable and you're a sponge and you want to learn things. And if you get something that's not right, and then it's hard to deprogram that.
My thing is always this, though. You said we've been doing this for how long, trying to educate people on this? Like, my thing is this: if you hear something or are faced with facts that somebody's bringing up to you saying, no, the way that you've been taught has been incorrect, and here's what the rules have to say, and the rules being, when we share it with people, it obviously contradicts how they were taught, right? Why would you not want to research that yourself? Why would you immediately go to, no, you're wrong, you cannot do that? If I was ever faced with somebody saying, no, the rule actually says this, man, then I'm going to be like, you better believe I'm not going to want to share misinformation. I'm going to go find out from the source for myself and find it and read the rules, read the case play, read the officials manual, read everything that I possibly can, watch educational videos. So I think that, to borrow the Ted Lasso line, I just think people aren't that curious anymore. You know what I mean? If we just be curious and if we're faced with that information that we've never heard before, go research it. At least look at it with an open mind. But you got a lot of
Twitter. You're just so used to seeing lies on Twitter that it's like, de facto, of course, that's not right, because I know something different. The other weird thing I find is, and maybe you can help us, because I know Chip and I have had this conversation for hours on the phone about what it came out earlier today, the height of the step, because as I'm stepping through on my non-pivot foot, there isn't anything in the rules that dictate how high I need to go or low I need to go on a step. And so one person was thinking, oh, well, you got to have that non-pivot foot down on the floor before you lift the pivot foot, which is nowhere in the rules. But certainly there is this notion that if you lift really high off the ground, off that pivot onto your non-pivot, and it looks like a jump, we're in some weird gray area, and then we have to now parse NBA, FIBA, and college. So what did we ever come up with at the end of that conversation, Chip?
So here's the thing. It's going to be, and I hate to say it like this, it's going to be obvious if a player jumped. It's obvious if a player is stepping or they're jumping. It just is, man. It just is. And I know that seems like a gray area for people, but if a player is pivoting, and then they're moving more horizontally with their movement than they are vertically, and I know that that's hard to grasp, but you can obviously tell if somebody is stepping or they're jumping. And so even if that foot is, both feet are off the floor for a split second before that other foot lands on the step through, that's still legal. There's no, back to what you said, there's no rule in any rule book prohibiting a player from stepping with their non-pivot foot and legally lifting their pivot foot to shoot. And let's just go ahead and dispel the myth for anybody on here that may have not followed me and Coach for a while on this. Like, literally lifting your pivot foot is always legal. I'm going to say it one more time. It's controversial. Lifting your pivot foot is always legal. What you do after you lift your pivot foot is what determines whether or not a traveling violation has been committed. If you lift your pivot foot legally, but then start a dribble, that is illegal. That is a travel. If you legally lift your pivot foot and step with your non-pivot foot and release a pass or shot for goal before your pivot foot returns to the floor, that is a legal lifting of your pivot foot, right? That's legal. It's a legal play. So people that say they lift your pivot foot, it's a travel. No, you can only use that rule for starting a dribble. It is
Right.
only it's only a travel if you lift your pivot foot before you release the ball to start a dribble. Any other time that you release your pivot or lift your pivot foot, it is legal as long as it does not return to the floor before you release the ball on a pass or try for goal. And then we had another interesting play last night, real quick, if I can add this. We had that other interesting play with Neesmith jumping to shoot the jumper.
Yeah.
Right? He was lifting to shoot a jump shot. He jumps off both feet. He realizes that the defender is close and he's not going to be able to get the pass off. He drops the ball in midair. And, of course, Doris Burke was like, that's a travel immediately. But in the NBA, it is only a travel if he is then the first to touch the ball after he's dropped it while he's been in the air. So if he jumps to shoot the ball and then realizes somebody's coming close and he can't get it off and he drops it, as long as he is not the first person to touch that loose ball, then it is not a travel. And in that play, you can see him put his hands down to his side. You can see him put him out to try to prevent somebody from coming in to easily steal the ball. And so then you see, I think it was Hauser that reached around to try to make a play on the ball. And while we can't see from the angles provided, if he's the first one to touch it, context clues tell us that when he swipes down like that and the ball accelerates forward towards the ground, the ball had to have been batted. And we know it can't be Neesmith because his arms are out like this. So in that situation, that was a legal play. Neesmith did not commit a traveling violation, no matter how crazy it might have looked to some people.
Does that change in college? Or is it the same rule?
Yeah. So you can't drop the ball to say. So here's the thing: is if the official interprets that to be a start of a dribble, then yes, you cannot drop the ball to save yourself from a travel. Like if you're going up and you can't get the ball off, and then you're going to end up landing with the ball in your hands, but the only way to save yourself is to drop the ball. You can't do that, especially if you're the first one to touch it. Now, if the official determines that was a start of a dribble, then that's a travel because you lifted your pivot foot before you started the dribble, right? Okay. So it's a couple of different scenarios. If they clearly just dropped it and then stayed out of the way and somebody else grabbed it, they're going to let that play on. I know I would, right? I'm not going to call a travel right there. If they're doing what Neesmith did right there and they're realizing they can't touch the ball, then it's just like a pass.
Okay, so the same kind of thing applies. If a college player was the first to touch that ball, again, for sure that's the whistle you're blowing for travel.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
Yeah. All right, interesting. I mean, whenever we normally see that, the ball bounces right back up to him, like they touch it immediately, so it's easy.
And kudos to Neesmith for knowing that he could not touch that ball first. He literally, as soon as he dropped it, he puts his arms out, and you can tell he's actively thinking, I cannot touch this ball. I've got to prevent somebody from trying to easily grab it. And so that's when he sticks his hands out. Hauser navigates around it, tries to reach in for it, touches it, and then he immediately grabs it.
For sure. Good call. What else can we talk about as we get closer to the end of the show? I don't know. Let's see here. We talked about both series. Now, does anybody think that it'll go past Game 5?
I think it'll probably go 6.
Really? You think they're going to win at home in Game 5?
Yeah.
And then let Dallas
we got a little momentum now. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm with Chris on that one. I think it's Dallas in 6 is starting to be the most likely, which is, hey, what you both of you guys, picked at the start, right?
Really? Maybe. But that said, Finch got caught with his pants down again where he had both Cat and Ant on the bench when the run. I think Cat was like in that quote unquote foul trouble area, but it was earlier in the game. And I'm like, all right, fine, then get Ant in there or whatever. You got to have at least one of those two guys on the floor at all time. When that's the reason why you have those two guys. So they're still doing stupid stuff. I hate to use that word, confounding. And, it went down to the wire when it shouldn't have like that as well. So I don't have a lot of faith in Minnesota. So it's in their court. It's the Minnesota. Please convince me that you guys can put this thing together, play a complete game. Because again, I'm just stuck on thinking for whatever reason, Kyrie was just off today. I'd like to look at, was there anything like in the first play of the game that like somebody jolted him and hit him or got him out of his start? He seemed relatively normal. And Luka had the bad vibes going on too, right? Like he was glowering at the referees and kind of angry. And as he's bringing the ball up, like demanding a foul, and that got him out of his sort. So I mentioned before you guys came on, it's like they'd probably be better off having somebody else bring the ball up and save him some energy, but B, get him out of this weird thing where he's like, I mean, listen, there could have been fouls. Like, they was pretty physical, but just get over it. Stop looking at the referee in the middle, and just play.
It's so frustrating, man. Like my son was watching the game with me tonight, and he's like, Dad, you say this all the time. And literally I catch myself saying it all the time. Like, they'll show a dead ball situation where Luka's talking, and I'm like, dude, stop talking. Stop complaining. Stop. Like, I'm saying that to Luka through the TV all the time. I'm like, dude, just stop. And sometimes it's just on, like, listen, I get it. If he was going to complain about anything, it should have been in the first few minutes of the game where they were being overly physical with him on the perimeter when he was dribbling the ball around. But then, like you said, Dallas got smart and realized, hey, listen, we need to get the ball into the paint, and then we can do the kickouts and all that stuff, and we're going to start drawing more fouls. And then, boom, the big three for Minnesota all get in foul trouble in the first half. You know what I mean?
And then how about this? They take Cat out with 5:20 to go in the fourth quarter, and then they call a timeout right away after one play to get him back in. I think they had maybe one or two after that, but it was like I could not fathom why they would have done that. Like, they didn't need to do that. Like, could have brought.
Was that a use it or lose it? Was that a use it?
Well, wait, remind me, Chip. What's the sort of the use it or lose it timeouts when you're getting in the second half? Are there any?
Well, are you talking about from the first half to the second half? The second half, you get 4 timeouts.
You have 4 timeouts. So they probably figure, well, we have 3 left. It's 5 minutes to go. Like, we're not going to use all 3, but they could if they needed them, right?
They could if they could. Yeah.
So the idea that you're going to burn a timeout to bring him back in right after the timeout where you took him out, like, that's just weird. Because
that is weird.
There's going to be a stoppage in play. Like, you'll get him right back in. I don't know. So maybe somebody smarter than me can explain exactly why they did that. But like, I was already picturing they're going to end up, with no timeouts left, having to inbound the ball, and then they get a 5-second call because they don't have a timeout because they blew it then. But luckily it didn't come back to hurt them. But that was weird. Chris, do you have any thoughts on that one?
No, I'm still thinking about what you were saying earlier about Finch taking out both. Towns and I think he did that. It was game 2. I think he did that in game 2 because I tweeted about it. I was like, why are both of them out the game? You need them both in the game. You need one of them on the floor. I mean,
it's funny. In the same vein as potentially a assistant coach in the NBA out there, not quite sure what the rule is about the one step. The substitution stuff, I still think ends up being by gut, just by like feel, you know. And if I were an NBA coach, I'd have AI doing the entire substitution patterns from minute one. Like, it would just be constantly trying to calculate who's out there on the other side. Who do you have? They got the sensors on their body, probably, who's tired, all that stuff. Like, that needs to get to that point, because you'll see like the coach walk toward the middle of the floor, and then all of a sudden they'll just quickly turn around and like point somebody and then put him in. Like, he's just thinking about it right then and there, right? And I would have been like, no, I want my slide rule, and I want to know, whatever the 5 is, what play we can run with against their 5, because we know that it will work because so-and-so likes to bump down the extra 2 feet under the basket. I don't know. We should be able to do that by now. And at the very least, you should be able to know you need to have at least Cat or at least Ant in the game at all times.
Well, at that situation where they were sitting near the end of the first half, they both had 3 fouls, right?
I remember that Cat, I think, was in foul trouble with 3, but was Ant in foul trouble?
Ant, Rudy, and Cat all had 3 fouls in the first half.
Yeah, and then Anthony Edwards finished with 5. All right, so that's your answer.
And I'm almost positive when they were both sitting, it's because they both had 3 fouls.
Okay, I remember seeing the Cat did. I guess I didn't check for Anthony. But if you got 3 fouls and it was,
So that begs the question is like, because I know we talk about this in college basketball a lot, but with 6 fouls in the NBA, if a player has 3 fouls in the second quarter with, let's say, 6 minutes left in the second quarter, you're probably sitting them, right?
Yeah, I mean, another question. Well, first of all, do you take him out when they get to 2 in the first quarter? Like that seems to be an automatic, and that's a little bit interesting, and maybe not.
Yep. I don't necessarily agree with that.
Third foul in the second quarter with how much time left?
Let's just say 6 minutes left, so halfway through the second quarter.
I mean, it kind of depends because if it's like Rudy, you probably take him out because he's always in the middle of blocking shots or whatever and dealing with stuff. And
you got to take Cat out. In my opinion, you have to take Cat out when he gets 3 fouls that way because he's prone to stupid fouls.
Yeah,
Yeah. So listen, going back, we said this a couple times already. What did Ant say at the start of the series and even in the last series?
Yeah.
Stop fouling. He tells Cat, stop fouling. We need you. Stop fouling.
Yeah,
and it still continues to rear its ugly head from time to time.
Take fouls. They look like take fouls. Like I decided 10 seconds ago I'm going to foul you. It's confounding, and they talk about it. I'm not making it up. Stan talked about it today on the show. Crazy stuff. And at this point, the guy's played for 10 years. I don't know. It's not going to stop, right? Is he going to change? I don't think so at this point.
I don't remember. The funny thing about Cat is I watched him when he was in Kentucky. I don't remember him being so reckless and
foul prone.
Maybe I'm going crazy and have to rewatch, but he seemed like the complete opposite. He seemed very.
I get that too because I watched it. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe I'm going crazy. I have to. I definitely have to go back and watch because every game he's just doing these weird movements, these weird fouls. I was like, when did he become this player?
I'm looking at his fouls per 36 across his career. He started out his rookie year as 3.4, 2.9, 3.5. So he's always been right around 4.
Okay.
Per 36. So certainly in the last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 last 6 years it's been very consistent. But yeah, it's that's also the difference between college. That team he was on was ridiculous, right? There was another center on that team, wasn't there?
Willie Cauley-Stein.
Yeah. So he doesn't have to do a lot of
the types of fouls, and we've already talked a little bit about it, but it's not just the reckless ones when he's on defense. It's on offense too, because when he gets up his head of steam going downhill towards the basket, it's like he's got his mindset on this is what I'm going to do no matter what, no matter who's in my way. And I mean, in a couple of those offensive fouls, the defender's just sitting there right in his path, and he still goes through them.
And he looks shocked.
It's not like the defender is shifting into his path at the last second. And even if he did, that would be legal as long as the defender is in his path prior to contact, or if it's an upward shooting motion, in his path and in position prior to the upward shooting motion. But on a couple of those offensive fouls, he hadn't even jumped yet. The defender's in his path and even retreating in his path, and he still just goes through them. And I don't get it.
Yeah, it's weird. Yeah.
On the Kleber one, I actually didn't think the ref was going to call it because he didn't fall down. And they usually wait for the fall down. He stood up, he took it, and I was like, oh, they still called it. I was like, oh, it was a charge.
Glad.
Yeah.
Damn,
I'm so glad you brought that one up.
That would have been a good tweet. Yeah, that's a good point.
I'm so glad he brought that one up because that everybody thinks that you have to fall down to take, or a lot of people think you have to fall down to take a charge. The reason that one had to be called right there and why it was such a great call is because it dislodged him from position and cleared him out enough to give Cat an advantage at an open look shot. So he cleared him out, gives him an open look. You have to call it right there.
Wait a minute. Okay, you're talking about the one where Cat nailed him with his forearm going up. Is that the one?
No. The offensive foul. First half,
you're talking about when he steps in and the back foot's dragging a little bit to get in front. Okay.
Yeah, he's actually Kleber's kind of retreating a little bit, and then Cat just lowers his shoulder, goes directly into him. It causes him to go back like this and prevents his ability to defend the shot. So,
but what did you think about the other one? Because Cat seemed pretty upset about that one where he goes to pull up, But what I saw was, yes, an overt move with his shooting arm to like kind of make contact with the guy.
PJ
Right?
Washington.
Like was there any interpretation necessary on that one?
No, I mean, the only thing that they had to decide between is, are you going to upgrade that to a flagrant one or keep this as a comment, like an offensive foul? In my opinion, it was an obvious offensive foul by Cat. The way he goes up to shoot, that was not natural in my opinion, but it wasn't so unnatural that it was a non-basketball move, if that makes sense.
Right.
It was one of those where he just has his elbow cocked out, and had he not done that, there wouldn't have been contact. And he just goes right up into the chin. So in that situation, you have to call that an offensive foul. Yeah,
for sure. I mean, it looked like he was frustrated or whatever. He needed to get some space and stuff. I mean, I remember in pickup, and I'd do that, and I'd pull up so fast. I remember in one game, I did it twice to the same defender, where I just pulled up on my left arm, on my arm swing, just clocked him under the chin. And, he was probably half turning and running, and I was pulling, when you do it fast, it's like,
oh, yeah.
I don't even know what he's doing. I'm just pulling up to shoot a jump shot. And I felt terrible about it, but it was like, you fouled the shit out of me. I could barely hold on the ball because your chin, hit my wrist so hard. But at any rate, that's interesting. So I don't know. I don't have faith. I feel like Dallas is going to win in Game 5. They're going to win it on the road.
You do?
Yeah. I just think that there's too many mistakes they make.
You think the Wolves are going to lose three home games in a row?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. Hey, listen, the home court advantage doesn't seem to mean as much these days. Mark had mentioned that too, the Game 7s that keep being won by visiting teams. But we'll see. I'm not even sure. Do you think that the recipe for success is shooting 25 times in a game?
I don't think it's I think he just needs to he may not be there yet with his decision making. You can see him probing with was it in the fourth quarter where he did that with the step through move that we were talking about earlier, where he was at the top of the key, dribbled probably for like 12 seconds, finally decided to make his move, got to the free throw line, he went right, spun, and then stepped through. Yeah. Like that, he used up the whole shot clock to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's just you see him just probing, thinking on the court, and if he can make those reads faster, like the three that he got the Towns to bring him up 5 or 8. That was a pretty good decision, right? Faster decision. He drove on Luka. PJ Washington was cheating just a little bit, but Towns was already on fire. Because he hit like 2 right before that, because he had 20 in the quarter or the half or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes the 3. Like those type of moves, just making the easy pass and not overcomplicating it. He has to be able to do it, but he's 22 years old.
Yeah.
It's going to be really inconsistent for him to be able to do that at each game.
I hear you.
I agree with that. And I want to say one more thing is, like, I think it's the quality shots he takes. Like, I don't think it's the 25. He needs to take 25. I'm saying he needs to try to get 15 to 20 quality shots and quality looks. You know what I mean? So don't just go into it thinking I just got to get it up. Like, sure, great, be in attack mode, but they need to be hunting quality looks for him and quality shots, and the whole team working towards that.
Yeah, I'm looking right now. There was 10 games where he took 20 or more in the playoffs so far, and they've won 8 of those. So, there is some, again, correlation or causation unclear, but there is this notion that, yes, like when he's aggressive, that helps everybody. But I mean, barely tonight was barely the thing that helped him. Although I love the fact that he had 9 assists. That was really important.
Yeah.
And I feel the same way. When he said the other day, I'm taking more shots, oh, look out, whatever. It's like, well, hold on a second. You do really nicely when you are just staying within yourself and the double comes and you pass. So I believe that the Mavericks probably are looking at that and saying, well, we want to limit those shots too. So they might show him more of a second defender as a shadow or something to try and dissuade him from those shots. I certainly would try it in the beginning and see if we can get some mileage out of that one. Before just kind of letting them go one-on-one or then rotating, because that's tough. The pre-rotating stuff I really like when you have someone shadow on the block, if he's on the wing, then you have a chance to get back if you're hustling. So anyhow,
what did you think of that pull up? It had to be with like a minute and 30 seconds left. He hit going towards the right wing.
Yeah.
It was a long 2. I thought it was a
Long
bad shot, but he made the shot. It probably should have been a 3, or he should have taken another dribble inside.
Yeah.
But that was a really long 2. I thought it was a bad shot. What did you guys think of that shot that he took?
Yeah. He made that one, right?
Yeah, he made it.
Yeah.
Yeah, you'd like for him to be a little bit behind the line, but yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, again, there's a lot of evidence that shows you, like, they're not quite there yet, which means, again, Kyrie won't do that again. Right. Whatever they did defensively didn't cause as much of what we saw. I mean, it was I don't know. I don't know what to say. And by the way, it's again, like you say, Chris, it's really hard to sweep. It's really hard to beat somebody 4 in a row. Something's going to be off. And Luka was off too for a lot of that. So
also, you guys think Lively plays?
Man, they haven't put him in. They haven't They had a shot of him tonight where his eye, it looked like the light was too bright for him and he was closing his eyes.
Dude,
do you think he's lying? You think they're lying about the concussion thing?
He got how do you not get a concussion? How is that not a concussion?
And why they were concerned about his neck? I mean, that's one force trauma to the back of his head. I mean, listen, I know that's connected to your head, so yes, the neck could hurt. But I would have been. And the way he got up, there's no question. You probably know what the answers are supposed to be for a concussion protocol.
Yeah.
And that's all I can explain. And listen, what do we know? We don't know anything about it. All I know is that even when they show the shot of him on the bench, my wife, who's a doctor, was like, "That looks like he's still suffering from a concussion," and that's bad.
Yeah. And I've had 2 of them before in bad concussions when I played soccer, right? And so it was, dude, I know exactly what that looks like and exactly that it feels like and exactly the mannerisms that he's having on the bench and the signs of him closing his eyes and the light's too bright type things.
Yeah.
I just do not understand how that's not a concussion.
Yeah.
All the signs are there, bro.
And if you're still suffering without proper rest from that and you get another one, that's devastating. We saw, and remember Michael Petrus? Michael Petrus from the Celtics fell backwards and he kind of whiplashed his head, but didn't hit the ground because the guy is a physical specimen. He probably was so strong in his core that he could hold his head from it slamming on the back of on the ground. But that violent move was still so violent that it sloshed his brain around. He never really recovered from that. He never played, I don't think, much in the NBA after that. And it could have been because they didn't have the protocol where you can't do any physical activity for a week or whatever it is. So I'm worried a little bit about that, but we'll find out.
Feel like we kind of have to trust it. I mean, I would like to trust the fact that they're not going to put him back in a situation if he's not ready for it. I would like to think that, but I would feel better if he didn't play next game, honestly. But that's me not knowing all the facts or whatever. If he's able to and he's great. But I wouldn't want to risk it.
Because I remember, what was it, 2 years ago? 2 or 3 years ago, Al Horford got a concussion. And I think the NBA protocols, it's like a week. You can't do anything for a week. So if they were to say that, he's basically out for the rest of the series. So they're never going to say that just, to cover themselves. Just in case.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah, well, we'll see. And by the way, you'll be able to know. You'll see if he's playing, and we'll see how's his balance, and and how's his reaction times. All those things are really important and scary because if you're screwing around with that. But hey, listen, you're right. It doesn't seem possible that they would be able to avoid that with some shenanigans. This doesn't seem possible. The only explanation I could have for that would be that maybe he knows what the questions are going to be. He knows whatever they're going to ask him. But I still think that they need to, they look at his eyes, the dilation, they make him stand on one foot. I mean, I think they do all that. You can't fake that, as far as I know. So anyway, so we'll see. We'll see what happens. But they need him. I mean, he's a huge part of that. And I think that was a huge point of why. I mean, the Powell minutes, were -3 in 3 minutes or -4 in 3 minutes. That's the game. Yep. They don't have to play him there, and they have Lively. And by the way, they could have just played Kleba those minutes. They really should have. They might have been there. And I hate to throw shit on Powell, but it's I'm telling you, Powell has been this guy for so long. It drives me nuts. Anyhow, well, listen, it's late for you guys. I think good show, and it's a nice length. Great to have everybody out there. So thank you everyone for being here. Thank you, Chip. Thank you, Chris. As always, we'll probably be back on Thursday night for Game 5. Are you guys going to be around?
Yep. I'm looking forward to it, man. I just will not be around if there's a Game 6. I will be gone. But
all right,
Game 5, I'm in, brother. I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good. All right. Well, we'll see you guys then on for Thursday, I think, unless something weird happens to me, but I should be here. Thank you, everybody there. Thank you all for this, for Spencer and Braun for super chats. And don't forget, sports fans, at B-Ball Breakdown. We're not a channel. We're a conversation. You in? Are you in, guys?
I'm in.